to wrap up my remarks. I already told you, you've already seen, this is a very common motif in medieval literature and medieval art. So at St. Joseph's, at our institute, which is the first one in the United States founded after Nostra Aetate was issued, we wanted to mark the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate in a very, you'll pardon the pun, concrete way. And so what we decided to do after much travail was to revisit synagoga and ecclesia and make it consistent with Catholic teaching today, which doesn't see us, the Christians, as triumphing over Jews, but rather the shorthand word is as chavruta partners. Chavruta is a traditional rabbinic way of studying Talmud in pairs, and you enrich one another by trying to give different interpretations of the common text that you're studying. Rabbi friend of mine, who's president of Hebrew College now up in the Boston area, he suggested some years ago that maybe this is the model for Jewish-Christian relations, that we're study partners. So we decided to do a sculpture of synagoga and ecclesia that expresses that. They're friends in covenant with God, both of them, both have crowns on their heads, learning from one another. You see a quote from Pope Francis: "There exists a rich complementarity," there's that word, "between the church and the Jewish people that allows us to help one another mine the riches of God's word," end quote. And that's somewhat because we share many of those texts, but we can also learn from one another's readings of texts that we don't share. I can benefit as a Christian by reading Talmudic and rabbinic interpretations. Jews have told me that they benefit by studying the New Testament. And indeed, there was recently published, you may already know this, a couple of years ago, something called the Jewish Annotated New Testament. 60 Jewish scholars of the New Testament and of the Second Temple period writing commentaries and essays. Again, this is a historic first. When did that ever happen before? And so we commissioned this sculpture, and it was dedicated on September the 25th, 3 weeks ago tomorrow, I guess. And here gives you an idea of what it looks like. Synagoga and ecclesia are comfortable in one another's presence. They are sharing their sacred text, the Torah, obviously in the case of synagoga, and a Christian Bible in the hands of ecclesia or ecclesia. We dedicated it with about 400 members of the Jewish and Catholic communities of Philadelphia, which, by the way, has its own unique history in terms of relations between our two communities. That also should be celebrated. I won't go into it now. And our institute played part of that. We had as the guest speaker Rabbi Abraham Skorka, the Pope's friend from Argentina, was the keynoter, gave a wonderful address. He's standing on the left here, and next to him is this other guy you'll recognize, and on my left is Adam Gregerman, and he and I are Chavruta partners. We are studying together all the time. We teach together all the time. Naomi Adler, who's the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, represented the Jewish community speaking. And the man holding the little baby is Joshua Kaufman, the sculptor, who created the statue. And to his right is Dr. Mark Reed, the new president of St. Joseph's University. And as I say, it was a wonderful afternoon with that crowd of 400 plus people. Outside of our chapel is where we've put this quite deliberately, because it's making a theological statement. And just as the medieval cathedrals were making a theological statement with their synagoga and ecclesia, we wanted to make a theological statement at the site of our campus's worship space. And voila, there it is. And then the next day, and this is my last slide, we were privileged to have Pope Francis himself stop by. Here Adam and I are greeting him with Archbishop Chaput. He prayed in front of the sculpture, the title of which is Synagoga and Ecclesia in Our Time. Underneath it says, "To mark the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate and the foundations of our institute." And at the very bottom, you can't read it, is the quotation I said earlier about a rich complementarity existing between us so we can mine the words of God together. He then blessed the sculpture in traditional Catholic fashion by sprinkling it with holy water. And then he and Rabbi Skorka embraced, and the Pope got into his Fiat and drove away down City Avenue amid the cheers of hundreds of students who had gathered by that time. Now, I don't want to overplay the significance of the visit, but the blessing of a sculpture in the Catholic tradition like this is a way of putting the papal seal of approval on the theological message that the sculpture imparts. And of course, the sculpture is expressing an idea that the Pope himself had articulated, and we made sure to include it on this dedication. And also his predecessor, Benedict XVI, had said something quite similar, as did John Paul II. So this is not new with Francis. But this is where we're going in the future. We have a chance to learn from each other. We have never had this chance before, particularly here in the United States, and that's what I think we are obligated as theologians, speaking for myself, and as Jews who are concerned about interreligious relations. This is an opportunity that's a blessed one that we must not fail to take advantage of. That's my prepared remarks. Thanks very much.